Parevses, Parirgun, Parirluis, Parigesor, Urvorek. Այսօրվա մեր discussion-ը պիտի լա անգլերենով, այնպես որ անգլերեն պիտի խոսիմ. Today we have a discussion about a book from Hrair Balian, and the moderator is David Akopyan. But before we start, I'd like to say a few words about the ARPA Institute, and also that will give a chance to people to join. The ARPA Institute has been working in Armenia for 34 years now, and we are a group of experts from various fields, and we provide expertise for Armenia, and we try to advance science, technology, healthcare, engineering, innovation, and many other areas. And of course, we're all volunteers, and we work on the basis of donations. We have several projects right now in Armenia. We've done quite a few projects in the past, but the ones that are ongoing now are our annual invention for young scientists in Armenia. This year last year we had received 12 inventions from various fields, and one of the inventions won the prize of $10,000. And we, of course, try to help them advance their research as much as possible and report to us in terms of what new achievements they have done. So we continuously do the invention competition this year as well. And the deadline is May 15, so it's very close. If you know of anyone who has any inventions, they can submit their inventions online or send it over email. And then we also have two main projects. One of them is in the Polytechnic University, where we have established the first advanced circuit design course. And this year we have around 120 students taking the course. Cisco Systems is helping in teaching the course, as well as their other teachers that work in Synopsys. They also teach the course. So several courses are being taught right now. And the main idea is to provide experts for the oncoming. As you know, there will be a large data center in Armenia and by NVIDIA, and they will need quite a few experts for circuit design probably. And also we work with other institutes of the government, of the institutes of the Academy of Sciences, and especially we work with the Alekhanian National Lab. We have several projects in there. The most important are we have a clean room. We have established the first class 1000 clean room in Armenia it's been going on now for 3 years. And we have a project that is being implemented in the clean room. It's related to a new approach to solar cells, to raise the efficiency of solar cells from 25% up to 50 and more percent. And actually, the results are very encouraging thus far. And also, we have another team we work with. It's called the radio frequency photomultiplier tube. This is another device that is used in many areas in science and research. The main objective is to detect very fast pulses. A laser pulse can be detected by this device down to 1 picosecond accuracy, which is much better than what exists in the world right now. And now we're trying to help them commercialize it. We are working with commercial companies that build, for example, either microscopes or diagnostic devices, because it is very important for diagnostic devices as well. And so they can try and uh, and help us develop it and uh, advance the technology more. Um, and also, of course, we work with other, as I said, other institutes of the Academy of Sciences, like the Molecular Biology Institute, Chemical Physics Institute, Physical Research Institute in Artsakh, and others. And also, we work with both universities, Yerevan State University and also the Polytechnic University. Um, Without further ado, uh, today we have, as I said, uh, two experts that are going to discuss a book related to uh, Karabakh conflict. The title of the talk is Anatomy of Peacemaking, Nagorno-Karabakh Conflict and Missed Opportunities. The author of the book is Dr. Hrair Balian, and the discussant is Dr. David Akopyan. First, I'd like to introduce David. David is a PhD in physics and has studied complex systems and has worked in the United Nations for 27 years and the last 10 years in Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria, and many other areas. And he has worked on many crises and been country director and resident representative as well. He is an AUA graduate, and he's also have been working with the Artsakh government for a while as principal advisor. And also, he's the president, he's an advisor to the president, and he's the chair of the Board of Trustees of Armenia Foundation, as well as a member of APRI. And of course, as you know, he's been actively participating in many of our panel discussions on various subjects. David, the floor is yours. You're mute.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Jakob, for the introduction and also for hosting us at ARPA site and this opportunity to discuss with Hrair, my very good friend Hrair Balian, his book. And we both have our stories about Artsakh. Hrair's story, of course, has been assembled into probably the most intellectually condensed analysis, which I personally had the opportunity and enjoy reading this 650-page document, which for me is monumental and historic value, and will stay with our nation for a while to learn also some of our lessons. But coming back, maybe I remember the first time we met, it was in Beirut. I was the UNDP head in Syria, coming from Damascus, and you were with Carter Center, director for the conflict resolution, and our focus was then Syria. And then step by step, we start getting into Armenian issues, Armenian problems, and it just happened that we both retired more or less the same time, 2021, soon after the war, I mean the 44 days war. And then you decided, I mean, I guess you will tell more specifically when. I decided immediately after my retirement to go to Artsakh and spend some time, almost a year in Artsakh, and have my reflections also. But your story lasts much longer. You went to Artsakh from the first days in 92 or 93, whenever you tell us more about this. But just to start with the first question, which will be, I think, to present our audience the background, why you decided to write this book, what was the overall reflection of this 30 years of the process, mediation, conflict resolution, negotiation, just a high flyer perspective on the issue, and then we'll go down into more specifics. So the reason why you decided, your attachment and your connection to Nagorno-Karabakh, to Artsakh, and the problem, why it is what it is.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Hagop. Um, First, I want to say it's really a pleasure to see so many old friends participating in this discussion or listening in this discussion. Ripsime, Kevork Santigan, I have not seen you in I don't know how many decades. Isaac, you're a neighbor, but we don't see each other too often. So good to be in this small group of for the discussion. Well, yes, you're right, David. I started working on Karabakh going back to the Sumgait days and late 1980s. But the first time I visited Artsakh was 1990 with Zori Balayan during the Soviet time. We flew on a helicopter to Kedashen, where a village had fallen, and we had given half a dozen victims, and we brought the bodies of the heroes who died in Kedashen at the time. And that first visit sort of hooked me into Artsakh, and I spent the next 4 or 5 years visiting Artsakh almost on a bi-monthly basis, trying to help them deal with the international community, which was something very, very new for them. Now, fast forward to the 2020s, the war and then the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. And I started working with them again, the Artsakh leadership, trying to help them, but it was already too late. And the loss of Artsakh made me think, why? Why did it happen? And I didn't see anyone in our community in Armenia, in Artsakh, among Artsakh Armenians, Armenia Armenians, and the diaspora Armenians, wondering why is it that we lost Nagorno-Karabakh? Asking hard questions, not just pointing fingers to the previous ones and the following ones and this and that culprit for the loss of Artsakh, but looking at ourselves as to what did we do wrong, or what is it that we could have done differently that could have saved Artsakh. And I didn't see this self questioning at all among the leadership, intellectuals, or ordinary people with whom I've been in contact. And I start researching the issue to see what, if anything, I could learn from this experience. And my initial curiosity turned into a book project very quickly, and it took me 3 years to complete the research and do the book. My research consisted of original documents, source documents produced by the various governments, source documents produced by the international organizations, the UN, and in particular the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which was in charge of the mediation process. Of course, the State Department papers, both officially released and also leaked, and that can be found on WikiLeaks, and some that I couldn't find on any online sources, but somehow I end up procuring those documents. And then I started interviewing people, former leaders on the Armenian side, former diplomats, foreign ministers, Azerbaijani and Turkish diplomats who insisted on remaining anonymous. And of course, the OSCE co-chairs of the Minsk group process. I had extensive interviews with them as well, trying to understand. The result was what David called the monumental 500-some pages book in the English language. Originally, I wrote it in English. which was published in February of this year by Palgrave Macmillan, and the Armenian translation published in April in Yerevan by Numag Publishing Company. And I just returned from Yerevan a week ago, a little more than a week ago, for book events there, Shonora Hantes in Yerevan, lectures, interviews, etc., etc. And again, another round of discussions with the leadership of Armenia and Karabakh leaders who happen to be in Yerevan. Of course, I could not interview the leaders who are in the Baku. So this is how the book was born. Just two more comments on this in my initial comments. One is that the English language publisher decided to sell the book at a very prohibitive price. I'm almost ashamed of the price. I, for one, cannot afford books at the price they're selling. So if anyone is interested, please drop me a note, and I'll be very happy to send you the PDF version of the ebook in English. The Armenian version is very affordable, the equivalent of about $18, 8,000 Armenian drams that you can find in Yerevan bookstores very readily. One final point. Any royalties that I receive, which would be very modest, I assure you, that I receive from both publishers, the English and the Armenian, I am donating the entire royalties to a scholarship fund set up at the American University of Armenia for students displaced from Artsakh. So I'm not profiting at all from the prohibitive price of the English language. So with that, I stop.
Thank you, Hrair, and very generous, and truly appreciate that. I didn't know that part, and this is really very kind for you also. Let me try to unpack the problem from two different perspectives, because there are many layers and each probably deserve a bit deeper zooming into this. Maybe first side is this observation from conflict resolution, peace negotiation process. And you have been in many conflict resolution negotiations, peace building processes, many different cases. And from early 90s till recently, I mean, there were enough cases globally to try to see, to compare, to learn some lessons. Maybe if you can, looking at this global big picture with conflicts and the peace negotiation process, and still many are ongoing. What will be, I mean, if you compare the Nagorno-Karabakh process against the others, what is making it different, or what is making it similar to the other conflicts you have dealt with?
You know, what is striking in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh in comparison to other conflicts is the similarities of the circumstances under which the conflict took place and the outcome of the conflicts. And I compare two conflicts here: Karabakh conflict, Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and the Kosovo conflict. And how we ended up with completely divergent, different results in both cases. Why, one would ask. And I'm thinking about doing a comparison, my next book, or I'm already thinking about my next book, to compare why is it that we had two completely different outcomes. I touch on this issue in my current book, the published book, but it needs to be developed further. Basically, when mediators approach a conflict in a biased manner, that has consequences. The consequences for us was the loss of Artsakh, one of the reasons at least for the loss, and many other consequences. We are in a period of human history, a very chaotic period in human history, where the rules, the so-called rules-based international order is gone, is eroded. And it's replaced by might makes right. the use of force is what resolves conflict. And when the use of force is what resolves conflict, we end up very frequently with much more severe, difficult conflicts to resolve, much more civilian victims than military victims in the conflict. And the wars resulting from this kind of conflicts last much longer than in, say, 20, 30 years ago. We are living in a world where middle powers such as Turkey, Israel, and the Gulf states seem to be ruling not the world, but at least the way in which conflicts move in this historic period. So there is a lot of consequences to the kind of wars that we are experiencing today, which I could say the Karabakh ethnic cleansing in 2023, in September 2023, sort of opened up the gates for. And immediately following that, just 2 weeks later, the Gaza war started on October 7, 2023, which is still continuing today, even though Israel claims that we have a ceasefire in Gaza, but every day there are still victims continuing. From there, we moved on to many other wars, again, falling into the trap of might makes right rather than the rules-based international order, which we enjoyed living in the 90s to early mid 2000. And even then, obviously, it was not strictly one or the other kind of world that we lived in. So all of this have consequences for the world and consequences for the future of Armenia that needs reflection as well.
Thank you, Hrair. And I think indeed, I mean, in this context of the global changing scene of too many complicated conflicts and still many upcoming, at the same time, it is probably right to say that there was the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and the resolution and the approach to this. There was an institutionalized approach. This OSCE Minsk group, not for every conflict, OSCE creates a special group. And the big powers, the US, France, and Russia, and probably they had much more harmonized approach years ago than they have now. So there was a consistent process from important global players, and it was still the time when the international law was working to some extent. But maybe if you can walk us through OSCE Minsk group process, what were the proposals that were coming through? Were they coming together? The Minsk group co-chairs, were they competing with their own proposals? Were the proposals, how deep were proposals taken, discussed, negotiated by, let's say, conflicting parties? But more from the OSCE Minsk group side, what was the process they were guiding us through?
Yeah, when Armenia and Azerbaijan became independent states in the end of 1991, early 1992, they joined the OSCE and the United Nations organizations. And the OSCE realized in their first meeting where they admitted Armenia and Azerbaijan that they had just admitted two states at war with each other. So sort of in a flipping way, they said, well, maybe we should try to mediate this conflict. Until then, individual states had been mediating the conflict. Russia, Kazakhstan, and Iran. And all three had been unsuccessful in mediating Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. So the OSCE said, all right, let's form a conference. Let's convene a conference to address this conflict. And Belarus, which was a member of the OSCE at the time, suggested Minsk as the seat for the conference. So there was that's the moment where the Minsk Group Conference was born. At first, it was Italy, then Sweden, and Finland who chaired the Minsk Group, but very quickly 3 states came forward to chair the Minsk conference jointly, and that was Russia, the US, and France. I'm skipping the minute details of how this came about. So from 1996 on, we had a triumvirate of 3 states chairing the Minsk conference, which never convenes. And from there on until 2025, the 3 Minsk group co-chairs basically ran the mediation effort without going back to the conference idea that was born originally in 1992. So the Minsk group came up with, the co-chairs came up with about 6 principal proposals for dealing with the Karabakh conflict, and about another half a dozen sub-proposals. So altogether about 10 to 12 proposals that were developed between 1996 and 2019 to deal with the conflict. They ranged from the 1996 Lisbon proposal, in which they proposed basically a very vague level of autonomy for Karabakh within the Azerbaijani sovereignty, which of course Armenia and Karabakh rejected immediately. Following that came a thing called the Common State Initiative, which was rejected by Azerbaijan, accepted by Armenia and Karabakh. And I should also say that at the beginning, there were 3 parties to negotiating: Armenia, Karabakh, and Azerbaijan. Karabakh had a separate delegation in the Minsk Group process. So then eventually the most comprehensive proposal was developed, the so-called Basic or Madrid principles, which had its sub-proposals later. This was the most comprehensive proposal that the Minsk Group proposed, suggested to the parties. This proposals dealt with 4 international law principles that needed to be regulated and taken into account when addressing the conflict. In the first place, first and foremost, was the right to self-determination. Second, the right to territorial integrity of state. And mistakenly, most international lawyers and states contrast these 2 rights instead of considering these 2 rights of self-determination and territorial integrity as conditional rights, where they coincide and intersect at some point with each other, in which then one could find solutions to the contrasting rights of self-determination and territorial integrity. The other 2 rights that were involved were the peaceful resolution of conflict, which is codified in the UN Charter, and the right of return for displaced persons if they are displaced as a result of war activities. So these briefly were the proposals that were developed. Now, if we look at the various proposals, I'm not going to get into the details of what each proposed, but the most comprehensive one, the Madrid proposal, dealt with all of the issues concerned. As I said, the most comprehensive proposal dealt with all of the issues concerning the Karabakh conflict, from the non-use of force in resolving the conflict, addressing the final status of the Karabakh Republic through a referendum, the recognition of the status quo of de facto independence and turning that into an interim status, return of the occupied territories around Karabakh, 5+2 or 6+1 formula, meaning we return the 5 regions first, and then Lachin and Kelbajar regions we keep until the final solution, final status of Karabakh is decided, return of displaced persons, lifting of economic blockades, diplomatic relations, and non-use of the returned occupied territories for any military purposes by Azerbaijan proper. So all of the issues were addressed in this Madrid principles. Let me stop there and let you ask more questions, David.
Thank you, Hrair. And there are already some good comments and questions coming, but let's leave it to the end. I have a few more questions just to walk collectively through those. And then after we'll go to the questions from the audience. I mean, you very comprehensively described this 30 years effort from the Minsk group and whatever the parties, because in traditional setting, there are no simple solutions. We all understand that the states are not created just easily by the switch or by simple decision. It is a complex process which requires many parties to agree, to negotiate, to compromise, etc. So, and then Minsk group also was trying from their side, their best, to find some common ground for solutions. So now let's move to the conflicting party side, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Artsakh. And so from your background on conflicting parties, what was the response to these peace proposals from OSCE Minsk group proposals, either individual or collective? And please, let's try, I think we're a limited group, I think, of highly educated people, because usual narrative is we were all open and willing to accept, but these bloody Azeris were not looking for solutions. They just want to war to continue forever. But there is some truth in the middle also. And let's try to see, because we are all Armenian in this group, but I think it's important lesson of your book and of our recent history to look objectively and analytically and try to see the mistakes or issues not well taken in time. So with this said, let's say what from the proposals we described have been taken, how it was taken, what was rejected, and what came to the end, why we came at the end to the war in 2020.
Okay. First, let me talk about a very important missed opportunity for the Armenian side. A missed opportunity that could have regularized the Artsakh status under international law and on the resolution of a UN Security Council, but without addressing the final status of Karabakh. In other words, in 1997, the Minsk group made a proposal in September, October 1997. The Minsk group made a proposal to the three conflicting sides, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Nagorno-Karabakh, to put aside, because it was so controversial, especially on the Azerbaijani side, obviously, to put aside the final status of the Karabakh and to give a legal dressing to the de facto independence of the Karabakh Republic. And that would have provided Karabakh international recognition, would have made Karabakh a full participating member in the negotiation process, a full party in the negotiation process, would have allowed Karabakh to keep its army, was called the self-defense forces, and all government apparatuses that had been put in place. It would have required the Armenian side to return 5 of the 7 what I call occupied regions around Karabakh. Some people call it liberated regions, which I think is a huge mistake. So would have required that we return the 5 regions to Azerbaijan. Again, Azerbaijan would not have been able to introduce its military forces into these 5 regions. And in fact, Azerbaijan would not have been able to use the airspace above these 5 regions, as well as Karabakh, by its air force at all. Refugees negotiations would have taken place for the return of Azerbaijani displaced persons into this 5 region in a sequence and rate to be decided in those negotiations. And Armenia would have been able to keep Armenian side, Karabakh would have been able to keep not only the Lachin corridor connecting it with Armenia, but the Lachin region entirely, as well as most likely the Kelbajar region. So Karabakh would have been connected to Armenia through this middle territories of Kelbajar and Lachin until the final status was decided, which could have been 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or never. Without. But in any event, Karabakh would have been able to continue existing under a UN Security Council resolution. In other words, would have had a international legal persona, just like Armenia and Azerbaijan, with one exception. Karabakh would not have had a membership in the UN organization, which is fine. We could have lived with it. We missed this opportunity. Karabakh, now, the president at the time, Levon Ter-Bedrosyan, wanted to accept this proposal, Minsk Group proposal. Azerbaijan, very important, remember this, Azerbaijan accepted, the Father Aliyev, going through his very pragmatic period at the time, accepted this proposal and said could live with this proposal. But Karabakh leadership and the power ministries in Armenia, including the prime minister then, the Robert Kocharyan, refused to accept this proposal and forced Levon Ter-Bedrosyan's resignation. We rejected, therefore, this proposal. I think this was a huge opportunity that would have regularized the status of Karabakh, and we missed this opportunity. Now, just as an example, let me cite the case of Kosovo, which was granted and accepted an interim status just like the one proposed to us, which eventually 5-6 years after that turned into full independence of Kosovo that the international community accepted, including 150 some state by this date that have accepted. So this is a huge missed opportunity in my analysis that we should have accepted, and we did not. Now, beyond this, I have identified in my book 9 reasons why the Karabakh mediation and negotiation effort collapsed at the end in 2023. And I will not go through all 9 reasons, but let me mention 2 or 3, 4 of them maybe, and I'll stop with that unless there are additional questions. Excuse me. The first reason relates to the first one, the notion of missed opportunity that I mentioned earlier, and that is all parties in this conflict, Armenians, Azerbaijanis, and Karabakh Armenians, Armenians, Karabakh Armenians, and Azerbaijanis had maximalist approach in the negotiation. This is the first reason why the negotiations failed. Now, maximalist approach in negotiations is fine, and often, if not always, one starts negotiations from a maximalist position, but knowing that at some point you will have to concede, give in some some areas of what you want in your maximalist demand to allow the other side to also give in and then meet in the middle somewhere. In Armenian, we call this the փողզիչում process, փողզիչումի process. We didn't do that. We stuck to our maximalist position, which is also fine. One can stick to a maximalist position, but you have to be able to afford that maximalist position. In other words, you're giving, when you stick to your maximalist position, you're giving a message to the other side that no point in negotiating, accept what I'm proposing, and that's it. No negotiation when you stick to a maximalist position, and which is fine also. But you better have, if you stick to this maximalist position, you better have an alternative, a better alternative to negotiated agreement, what we call in conflict resolution BATNA, better alternative to negotiated agreement, right? Azerbaijan didn't have it at first, a BATNA, a better alternative to negotiated position. They stuck to maximalist position, except when Father Aliyev accepted the 97 proposal. But after that, they refused everything. So they didn't have an alternative, but they prepared their alternative. What was their alternative? The use of military force. Yes, they had the means with which to prepare. Yes, Turkey was helping them. Turkey trained 18,000 Azerbaijani army officers in the 20 years that followed 97. 18,000, right? Think about it. And Azerbaijan prepared for the 21st century war, thanks to Turkey and Israel. What did we do? We thought time was our alternative, that time would work in our favor. Unfortunately, time worked against us because we did not prepare any other alternative. Yes, we didn't have the kind of resources that Azerbaijan had, but we could have done much more than what we did to prepare for the incoming war, and also for the participation of Turkey in that war. So first, maximalist position. Second, second reason, we did not prepare an alternative to the negotiated agreement. Third, in 2019 and 2020, the leadership of Armenia unfortunately engaged in hubris, provocative behavior, provocative statements, provocative actions, basically precipitating the war that was written all over the walls to begin with. So we gave, because of this irresponsible behavior, I can call it irresponsible behavior, we gave Azerbaijan and Turkey the casus belli to start the war in 2020, September 2020, the 44-day war. I can give many examples of what I'm talking about. One, we started declaring suddenly in 2019 and 2020 that the Minsk group process for the preceding 20-some years is completely wasted. All the proposals are to be thrown into the trash bin, and we have to start the negotiations from scratch, from zero. Okay, so you can imagine being in the shoes of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs when one of the parties to the conflicts tells you that 20 years' work is wasted, so let's start from zero. And what guarantee is there then 5 years from now you would not say the same thing, start from zero? Second, irresponsible approach was Gharabagh is ours and that's it. Gharabagh Հայաստան է եւ վերջ. Okay? Yes, previous leaders had done that, but this close to when the other side is preparing to war, to make this kind of declarations is complete nonsense. I'm sorry, it's a populist nonsense catering to the nationalist side of the Armenian reality without thinking about the consequences. Declarations such as, even if Karabakh's independence is recognized by the international community and etc., what we want, you give us what we want, we will not return the occupied territories around Karabakh. We will keep the 7 occupied territories around Karabakh. Another message. Or a message that the Sevres Treaty is still valid today. What message does that give to Turkey? And repeatedly saying, and I could go on and on and on, over a dozen such irresponsible statements and actions from the Armenian side that basically provoked the war. The exclusion, let me just mention 1 or 2 more things and I'll stop. The exclusion of Karabakh from the negotiation process from basically March 1998 on. Remember, there were 3 parties until then. From March 1998, Armenia and its president decided that Armenia will represent Karabakh in the Minsk Group negotiations. Karabakh doesn't need to participate in the Minsk Group negotiations. Yes, the Minsk Group chairs often came to Stepanakert or in Yerevan, consulted with the Karabakh leadership. But that is not the same as Karabakh being in the corridors, in the meeting rooms where the discussions were taking place. Consultation is one thing, participating in negotiations is another. And in any conflict situation, when you leave an important participant in that conflict out of the negotiations, immediately you generate suspicion in that party as to why are they being excluded, what is being discussed behind them, and they're sort of start being more intransigent in their negotiations process. I'll stop here. I've identified 9 reasons why the negotiations failed, and each one of them I developed in the book extensively, and each one of them I hope one day will sit down in our reality and have a discussion as to why did it fail, Karabakh negotiations, and how can we prevent similar failures from taking place in future negotiations that for sure Armenia will get engaged in the existence of its statehood.
Thank you, Hrair. And indeed, I mean, I'm happy that you moved to this missed opportunity, because this is a critical also as a part of our lessons learned for the future. Because for me, you had like 30 years of negotiation process, and then one party, I mean, we also were getting armed, but Azerbaijan was getting armed at much higher speed. You mentioned 18,000 officers trained by Turkey NATO standards, but they spent $40 billion in these 20 plus years. We spent $4 or $5 billion. So scale is not comparable at all. But at the same time, and it is really strange, the rhetorics of Armenian side was also getting harder and harder. I mean, when you see your other negotiating party is getting stronger by day, you need to probably adjust your approach and try to be more flexible and ready to allow bigger compromise.
And more careful.
Yes, be more careful. I even remember, but even these liberated, occupied regions also, it's really strange that even on this, when they were called liberated, Agdam is old Armenian city, Fizuli is even older Armenian city. And so this mythological extension of Armenian history to the regions, which had very some Armenian memories, but they were not dominant Armenian. At least I didn't find any record in the history that they were. And for me, I remember after the war in 21, in April or May, when I discovered that Nagorno-Karabakh Republic constitution has been revised and all these regions were added to the territory covered by the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. I said, after the defeat in the war, probably the first right thing will be to compromise and to change the Nagorno-Karabakh constitution, saying we're ready to give this back, but then let's start talking about something practical, coexistence together. For the people looking at me, how come these are liberated territories, old Armenian lands? So there was no willingness, even after the war in 21, neither in Yerevan, not in Stepanakert, to think pragmatically about solutions.
Right. No, I agree.
And one of the things, right, you mentioned this at the AGBU presentation about this preparing population, because one thing is the mistakes by the leadership or miscalculations by the leadership. And then if you prepare your population in one direction, which is totally mismatched from the realities on the ground, there should be special effort to prepare the population. And whether, and because Serge Sarkisyan, Robert Kocharian, Levon Terpedrosyan, Nikol Pashinyan, they were all saying these are negotiating. When they go outside, they negotiate. But when they come back, this is like no single each to be given back. Watch me, yes, this is this world. And
No.
they all were, let's say, approach to the country, to the population. The population was totally for this, no inch to give up.
Not only they were not preparing the population, they were telling the population that both sides, Azerbaijani Armenian side and both sides on the Armenian side, meaning Armenia and Karabakh, were telling the population that we don't have to make any concessions. All we have to do is sit back, time will be on our side, and eventually we'll get everything we are asking for, we are demanding, which was wrong. Now, here, the fault is not only with the parties to the conflict, but also with the co-chairs. The co-chairs could have prepared the population as well, and they failed to do that as well, unfortunately, in this mediation. And I contrast this in the Northern Ireland negotiations back in the late 1990s, when George Mitchell, Senator George Mitchell, was mediating the conflict. On every opportunity, George Mitchell was talking to the Irish people, to the British people, trying to convince them that they have to make certain difficult concessions, very difficult concession, unpopular concessions, but that is a necessity. He was educating the public. In the Minsk group process, unfortunately, the co-chairs also missed this opportunity to educate the public. And what happens when the public is not educated, thinks that maximalist positions could prevail, then when their leaders make the slightest concession, then the people revolt and stand against it. And this was one case in which, when Father Aliyev was hesitating in terms of concessions, he realized that he couldn't even convince his own family that the concessions he was considering at Key West were good for Azerbaijan. And he said, if I cannot convince my family, how am I going to convince my people? Because he also had failed to prepare his people and his family for the concessions. The same goes on our side as well.
But, you know, in addition to leadership and people and OSCE, also the co-chairs, etc., I mean, intellectuals of the nation, the thought leaders,
of course,
whether they made any special effort on this, this is also, to me, a separate question, just to explain to people that in any conflict, there should be two sides and every side should find a way to compromise. And no one was talking, because I remember, let's say, in this $40 billion Azerbaijan spent on military, there were a number of articles. I was not in Armenia, but I was following in Armenian press that Azerbaijani army is totally corrupt. There are kickbacks from Belarus, kickbacks from Russia, kickbacks from whatever, and all the tanks come broken, nothing is functional. Drones, we don't need drones, we have better answers to these drones, etc. So a lot of, let's say, mythology around, which justifies our side without facts or meanings on the ground.
Yeah, and we kept repeating this thing, this hungerk, that the Turks cannot fight, we can fight. So the next time there is a war, we'll end up in Baku or in wherever, Ganja or whatever. This kind of complete nonsense instead of facing reality that the other side is arming itself to the teeth. And we're still with the 20th century weapons. We're still fighting a trench war when the other side is preparing for the 21st century war. And the likelihood that Turkey would join the fight, we did not even see that. We did not perceive that at all.
True. And coming to the conclusion, couple of two more questions. Maybe one specific about the Artsakh after the 2020 war until ethnic cleansing September 2023. Do you think there were any chance to do things differently by the Artsakh leadership, compromise, find a common whatever solution, whatever possible, but to preserve Armenian population majority on that land? Because eventually, even 100 years before 1920, yes, we lost some wars, we gained something here and there, but we compromised, we accepted Soviet Azerbaijan and Karabakh being part of the Soviet Azerbaijan, and we maintain Armenian population with Armenian churches and whatever. This time, to me, came the worst outcome. Like territory which was Armenian populated for almost 3,000 years uninterrupted has been totally emptied from any Armenian human side. And if you remember, we wrote together an article 2 months before the final end in Modern Diplomacy about solutions possibly from Syria. But was there any will? And I was myself also part of with Sergei Ghazaryan, the foreign minister of Artsakh. We're trying to find and meeting some US officials about meeting in Bratislava, meeting in Sofia. Then it ended up meeting in Agdam, etc. So what could have been done differently by Artsakh leadership the last months or the last years of unfortunate conflict?
That's a very good question, David, and I have often wondered about this question myself. And at the time, in early 2023, I was wondering what, if anything, could be done. Theoretically, I would have liked to think that there was a solution. But let's step back for a minute to 2020 and how the war stopped in November, on November 9th, 2020. We were completely defeated. The Armenian side was completely defeated. We were on our knees. And Stepanakert was at risk of getting invaded. They were at the gates of Stepanakert at the time, on November 9th. Had it not been for Putin and Russia, and the ceasefire, the trilateral ceasefire that was signed on November 9th, I think we would have lost within a few days the entirety of Karabakh. The only thing that stopped the Azerbaijani advance midway, or almost 90% done, was this ceasefire agreement. Azerbaijan accepted the ceasefire agreement very, very reluctantly because Russia pressured it. Okay. And Azerbaijan was looking for the slightest opportunity to complete the work that was their work that was interrupted from their point of view. Okay. So I would have liked theoretically to think that perhaps had we proposed a high-level autonomy within Azerbaijan, we could have saved Artsakh, and we could have saved the Artsakhis from the ethnic cleansing. But I think realistically, if we think in a hard way, I think we were beyond saving Artsakh at that point already. So no matter what we had done, Azerbaijan eventually would have found the excuse to take over Artsakh altogether, which happened in September 2023. Within 24 hours. There was hardly a war. I mean, Artsakhs were starved to death, basically, literally starved to death after 10 months of complete blockade of the enclave. And they were on their knees, basically, and they could not resist. And Armenia had abandoned them already. Remember, Armenia had abandoned them. Artsakh could not have resisted the new onslaughts, and they gave in, basically, to save lives.
Okay, thanks, Hrair. And
so I
last
doubt.
question. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, please. Yeah, no problem.
Just basically to sum up, because we touched also about lessons learned, Armenia as a nation, Armenian leadership, and probably general peacemaking. Whatever lessons are you want to share, and what mostly they are also reflected in your book also, but looking forward and looking for the future, how can we make ourselves better prepared for future challenges like the one we lived through a few years back?
First, I would not expect to have assistance from others when we are not assisting ourselves. I think we ought to sit down in a very serious scientific way and look into why we lost Artsakh. We haven't done that yet. Really, as a nation, as a state, either in Armenia or as Gharabakhis, we have not sat down and examined in an objective way, as objective as possible, why we lost Artsakh, both militarily, why we lost Artsakh, and the negotiation process, why we lost Artsakh. Why we lost Artsakh, relying on one supporter, Russia. And what are the lessons we can learn from these three failures? Relying on one ally, not preparing militarily, and not taking advantage of opportunities in the negotiation process, pursuing it in a maximalist way. What can we learn from this so that in the future, as a state, Armenia as a state will be engaged in negotiations forever, for as long as it exists? It will have negotiations with its neighbors. It would have negotiations with everyone. What can we learn from this failure that we can apply in the future in Armenia's negotiations? Is something that we have not done yet in our reality. We need to do it at the leadership level. We need to do it at the intellectual level. We need to do it in the political parties. And we really have to look beyond pointing fingers to here and there. You know, one other thing we have not done. We won the 1990-1994 war against Azerbaijan. Has anyone in this audience seen an analysis that examines why we won that war so we can learn lessons from it? Why did we win that war? Because we could fight and the other side could not fight? No, there are far more complex reasons. And we have not even done that, let alone why we failed. We need to do all of these self-examinations. It's about time.
No, thank you. And indeed, totally agree, Hrair, on this, that until you don't learn your lessons, you continue repeating the failures. So at some point, and I mean, there are many other cases in the history where nations, at some point, they wake up, realize, and start learning, adjusting, adapting, and developing and changing the behavior during the crisis. Because it's, yes, we can continue for some time without, if there are no any shocks outside, but when the next shock comes, we also will probably be equally unprepared because we didn't take the lesson from the past one. So thank you. I think with this I'm done. There are a number of comments and questions. Hrair, are you able to read them and maybe you just read and go through them?
No, I can't read. Why don't you ask the questions?
Because some of them are more comments, some of them are questions.
Okay.
Let me try to maybe ask specifically the questions, but then after, so there are 6 or 7 of them. So in my humble opinion, I believe the causes to losing Artsakh to some extent may be attributed to our grandiosity as Armenians. Second, not taking our counterpart seriously, not seeing the big picture, Turkey support, etc., while the other powers, as usual, engage in bystander apathy. Our lasting experts have strongly indicated that Armenians as a nation, including diaspora, did not make any effort to fight and resist. The Azeris conducted a blitzkrieg combined with shock and awe. Sorry for the long message. So this is more comment. Charles Pilavian. You want to give some feedback to this?
I agree. What he calls, what Charles calls our grandiosity, I call it our maximalist approach, as well as the other side's maximalist approach. And we discussed this at length. I don't want to repeat it, other than to say I agree with him.
Okay. Someone is asking, I don't see the name, but please send us the PDF version. Maybe we can send to the group separately. You will find a way technically how to do this. And there's also a question specifically, is it true that Artsakh Karabakh leaders refused to join with Armenia in 94, preferring to be independent state?
No,
instead,
that's not true.
Were they serving another interest, or had they no freedom, or just by preference?
No, that's not true. The whole Artsakh movement started with Miatsum slogan, union with reunion or union with Armenia. It started, and at the end of 91, the Artsakh leadership correctly realized that if they continue, when the Soviet Union was falling apart and Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia were preparing for complete independence, Miatsum calling for union with Armenia would have put Armenia in a very, very difficult situation of seeking territorial expansion, which is no number one in international relation and UN membership. And correctly, Artsakh leadership, as well as the Armenian leadership, realized that and made a course correction. And Artsakh started calling for its independence and declared its independence in December 91. So it was not in 94, it was in 91, end of 91.
So, okay, thanks. And there's another one from Charles also Pilavian. I totally agree regarding the lost opportunities. That is most likely ascribed to our formidable naivete. So, which probably, I mean, we are on the same page on this.
We dealt with that issue, yeah.
Hrair Balian gave us an excellent analysis of fundamentals of Armenian failures that led to the loss of Artsakh. So it's more comment. And another comment also, we're drunk with our victory.
David, it's not just the Armenian failure. The failure was also, there were also failures from the OSCE Minsk group side, which we didn't get too much into it, but there were also failures there. But principally Armenian failure, yes, I agree.
Okay, I think we have so much. I think if no other question,
perhaps you could open the floor.
You want to make any concluding comment, Huri?
David, I have a question, if I may.
Please go ahead, Hrair.
Yeah.
Hrair Balian.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah, Hrair, thank you so much. Do you have insights on the political psychology and social psychology on the Armenian side for the behavior that you have described? Is it looking down at the Azeris as maybe not equal to us? The trauma of what happened over the decades before? What do you think led over so many years to one failure after another to appreciate the political situation? It's kind of hearing you say all of that, and I've read it before also, I'm always puzzled. How come we have put ourselves in such a corner? And it's hard for me because I'm Armenian, it's hard for me to explain, but I always worry that the trauma, the old trauma decades before has led us to this blindness, political blindness that you have described. Thanks.
All right, very, very legitimate question you are asking. I'm not a psychologist, so I would not venture into analyzing ourselves from a psychological point of view to identify reasons why we haven't done it. All I can do is look at what we're doing now. I mean, after all this failure, have we sat down and honestly have we sat down with ourselves honestly to look at why, what happened? We haven't done it today. We didn't do it when we won the war in 94. We didn't sit down to examine. We made some grandiose statements. We know how to fight. The Turks don't know how to fight. If they start another fight, we'll end up in Baku. And nonsense statements continuing until 2020. Okay. Earlier, I said in a flipping way that I think it was in the private conversation before it was open to the audience, that we are used to looking at ourselves in the mirror very frequently and thinking that we are seeing the world in the mirror. But all we're seeing is ourselves. All we're looking at is ourselves. Okay? There is a world around us. Today, there is a world around us. There's a war going on around us. Have we taken precautionary measures? Are there precautionary measures that we can take today? Have we? I haven't seen anything, really. Okay, I like to be an optimist, say maybe all the measures taken are secret and the population shouldn't, people like me shouldn't know. But I doubt it, really. This is a phenomena, I think, that requires self-examination. We need to understand why we won. We need to understand why we lost. It's too late for Artsakh. We lost it. It's too late. But there will be other emergencies, urgent things for Armenia to deal with. Can we learn lessons to date so that we can apply in future emergencies? We haven't done it. We haven't done it. We don't have this habit in our Armenian reality, in Armenia or in the diaspora. We don't have it. Yeah, I don't want to venture into the psychological reasons. I don't know, frankly. I don't understand it. It's too bad, but we need to do it, really. I know I didn't answer your question.
I was muted, but my point is that I totally agree with your point, not only in Armenia, but also in diaspora, because diaspora being free, in a sense, to reflect and provide more intellectual reflection on what happened, what did not happen, it probably will be, and having enough intellectual thought leaders also in diaspora in many fields. And it is not about, let's say, coming or criticizing the government or doing something against, but collectively reflecting and giving some feedback. Because there's also a comment saying there was an examination committee by the government about the causes of that, but it has not been publicized. And frankly, I have no confidence that it is a serious, solid analysis. 6 years after, in Israel, after Yom Kippur War in 73, 6 months after, they had very detailed analysis. Who did what mistake was made by whom, and
not just analysis, David, not just analysis. They also brought down governments who were responsible.
Exactly, Golda Meir, exactly, resigned.
Right. Okay.
And then the Vinograd Commission in 2006 also. But so there is another point, right? I think suggestion is, if lessons learned is the most critical thing, and we need to collectively try to reflect and collect these lessons. Why you, Hrair, start doing this and we together try to do something together? So yes, history, we reflected upon the history, we analyze it. Now it's time to reflect on lessons.
Yeah, I mean, look, the parliamentary commission that examined the reasons for the 2020 failure, okay, not only did not publish its findings, whatever those findings are, but the opposition in parliament did not participate, boycotted this parliamentary commission's work, which is irresponsible, to say the least. Irresponsible, to say the least. Okay, this was an opportunity to look into it and force the government to look at the reasons. And we didn't do that. The opposition didn't do it, right? As I said from the outset, the purpose for my writing the book is to start a debate, start a conversation about this issue among various levels, on various levels, in Armenia, in the diaspora, among the leadership, with intellectuals. I'm doing it with my humble means as an individual. But we need to do a lot more. We need to engage. One of the things I did in Yerevan was engage with a group of about 100 young people and students in a student association. It was the most interesting discussion I had the whole month that I was in Armenia. About 100 very young students and young people. I mean, they were questioning everything, and they were prepared to engage in self-criticism. Okay, their own maximalist approach as members of the public. Okay. But I tried to engage the government, to engage with the government.
Good luck.
I failed. I failed. Nobody would engage with me. Why? Because I am a Spirkahai? Because I'm a former Sharkain Tashnaksagan? And because I'm working on ARPA. Those were the three reasons given to me why they would not talk to me in the government, from the government. I mean, we don't have this in our ethos, it seems. Self-examination and critical thinking. We don't have it, it seems. And the very few, not even a handful of think tanks in Yerevan, there are hundreds of think tanks in Yerevan, but very few are serious, very, very few are serious. And they do some, but it's not enough. It's just not enough. I engaged with two think tanks in Yerevan, and had good discussions, but it's not enough. It has to be larger and has to have an output. In other words, a product that we can share with the public. None of that has been done. So far, my book stands alone. Okay. I'm continuing. I will continue talking with whomever is willing to listen.
Okay, thanks, Hrair. And there's also two more, I think, comments and questions also. Arman Antonian, I have joined too late, so apologies if this was covered. I don't think those questions were covered. Question one, how significant was the diaspora's role in this failure? From my view, frankly, everyone was maximalist on all sides, Armenia, Artsakh, diaspora.
Yep.
And this is question one. Question two, how do we have these conversations now without rubbing in the wood? Which is also a related question, but good questions, please.
Okay. Yes, the diaspora had its share of responsibility in the maximalist positioning of the Armenian side. And the diaspora is equally not taking its responsibilities seriously today by not examining why we failed. Okay, equally, I mean, with Armenia. Both sides, diaspora and Armenia, need to sit down and examine why this failure, both the military as well as the negotiation political failures. Sorry, the second question was what? I forgot.
Second, how do we have these conversations now without rubbing in the wood, which I guess eventually, I mean, yes, you need to rub the wound just to make sure that nothing stays.
I hope I've tried to approach my book from a very objective point of view and dealing with facts and never rumors, never a seesaw here and there. And I hope I have been able to avoid rubbing the wound. That is not the purpose of my book. My purpose is to start a conversation, a debate, a scientific, serious debate on the issues that are dealt with in the book. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. We should not, the purpose of the examination should not be rubbing the wound and saying, I told you so.
So another one, Dr. Isaac and Kyan. we won't have an objective evaluation and lessons learned processes regarding what caused the failure, because once you open such a sensitive yet honest discussion, people would be labeled as traitors, Turkified Armenians, as a demonizing approach to shut them up, which
That's
is the
okay.
case. But still, I think your previous answer covered this one also, but right, will be good just to reinforce the point you made.
People who are engaged in name calling are not serious. I've been called a traitor. I've been called all sorts of names, etc. I'm not going to get into some of the things people have called me, both in Armenia and in the diaspora. They're not serious. I don't take them seriously. We're talking about starting a conversation with serious people who are capable of thinking without using insults against each other, seriously engaging in an intellectual conversation. Frankly, I'm not interested in people who do nothing but name calling. And I see that on social media day in, day out, and I can't stand it, really. But you're right, Isaac. That's a problem in our reality, unfortunately. And it's not just our reality. I see that in other realities too. When you look at Trump and his opponents, the MAGA and opponents, you see the same phenomena of name calling rather than engaging in the substantive discussion. That's a disease of our days, unfortunately, with social media.
Thank you, Hrair. And the last comment, I think, is what I also I'm ready to sign with what is said by Charles Pilavian. Thank you very much for this very informative and eye-opening presentation. Indeed, we need to learn from our mistakes and take preventive measures. And from my side also, I want to add, right, that on many things, we have different opinions, different understanding, you and me also personally, and
Absolutely.
coming from different backgrounds, etc. But we are happy and listen each other, to see the other perspective and try to see the facts the way they happen, not the way we want them to happen, or not the way they happen in our dreams, and to take the facts, analyze them, put them in some order, and construct some storyline for our future evolution. So with this said, thank you really very much, you, all the audience, for this very engaged discussion. I personally also appreciate it a lot. I have been in a couple of your presentations, and this was one of the best ones because it was really personal, emotional, and looking for the better future for all of us collectively.
Yeah. David, quick comment to you. Maybe we ought to line up 4 or 5 competent political psychologists, Armenians, and not look just at this, but more broadly, the fractures and the fissures we see within Armenia and outside, and kind of look at it from that perspective. Maybe we can get some better insights as to what's driving a lot of these things.
Good
idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we need 4 or 5 good, no kidding, competent political psychologists who understand the Armenian worldview.
And sociologists.
And sociologists, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we heard the history from Hrair today, wonderfully well done. But we got to now step back and say, what's driving all of this? Why? Why are we? And then you see the fissures now within the diaspora, army, and on and on and on and on. But we got to. So is it? I was worried that it's the trauma, the genocide trauma, has got us here. But I'm not a psychologist, so I should not make projections.
I think if each one of us participating in this discussion, if we can start talking about the need to have a discussion, a dialogue on these issues, an examination of these issues, I think we can be one step forward. We can
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Hrair, and thank you, David,
you.
for this excellent discussion. And I think it's very helpful. Maybe, David, you can maybe talk to the president and have him talk with Hrair, and then eventually he can talk to his people and then get into talking with the government.
Yes,
Maybe
I
that's
had
a
the
good start.
opportunity. Hrair didn't mention, but I organized the meeting for Hrair with the president a few months back. And
Oh,
we discussed, he listened. So at least on his side, I think he was open to
Yeah.
listen the other
Yeah.
perspectives
good.
of the
Okay.
story. And I gave him the book also,
Yeah.
Hrair's book, a
Mhm.
copy, which he promised to read also and reflect. But again, I mean, there was also comments here and there about, let's say, not listening to the other side, not willing to constructively discuss the difficult issues. But at the same time, Harald, from many different reflections after your presentations, I feel that there was overall an atmosphere about coming to live with the facts, analyzing the reality, and looking for lessons and looking for solutions. So I think what you have done and what you are doing is very important. And let's expand a bit the circle. Try to talk to more people. And despite all these sort of, let's say, challenges, which especially in the world of social media, to see the truth. I mean, there is still truth, and there is still way to work with the truth.
Sure.
So thank you all very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Jakob, you want to say any final words?
Yes, thank you very much. The conclusion I have is that we need to get our feet on the ground and not fly in the atmosphere and look at things from our history. It's enough. We've had history. Yes, our history is important. We should not forget it. But then now we should realize what reality is and accept it, and therefore analyze our situation accordingly. That is, I think, our bottom important issue with all Armenians. Thank you very much. Now, the only thing that I'd like to announce is please donate if you like what we're doing so we can do more in Armenia. And also, we have a simulation on May 9th, next Saturday, actually, at 10 a.m., from 10 to 12. It will be with the AGBU Armenian Virtual College, a joint effort. And what the simulation is all about is how can Yerevan continue progress toward peace under the Armenia-Azerbaijan ceasefire while minimizing negative repercussions from geopolitical volatility around Armenia and all over the world. So I think what the simulation will do is try to see what conditions are currently, what Armenia needs to do, and how to react and how to proceed so that we are still safe and secure in Armenia and the country is not jeopardized again. And of course, that also needs quite a important analysis and realistic analysis. Thank you very much and hope to see you next week.
Yeah.
On
I got one quick thing. There are two people who are volunteering, as I see it, on the political psychology side, Dr. Isaac Andakyan and Charles Pilavian. I would be happy to connect with them, and David and we can connect with them and maybe work with them to do so. Isaac and Charles, if you can send me or David an email with your email. Mine is easy, hkabayan@aol.com, and I'll follow up with you. Thank you.
we have their emails. We can
You
connect.
have their email. Can you forward them to me so we can start a email exchange?
Yes. We need information first of all about what they are and how they can contribute, so we can make sure that everybody is in the right position.
And
Thank you very much.
Hagop, if I may send the PDF to you so you can distribute to the participants, I would appreciate
Sure, we'll
it.
put it on our website.
No, don't put it on the
No?
website. I'll
Okay.
get in trouble with my publisher.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.